Hey guys, this is the Mile High Fishing Magazine podcast. Myself, Eric Ali, Matt Mascarenas, we're here at the Colorado Walleye Association Western Walleye Expo. We're joined by Brad Petersen and Charlie Black, 2018 CWA Angler of the Year team, correct?
Yeah, Team of the Year in 2016 as well.
So you guys missed 1 year.
Yeah,
So before we start,
we're slacking a little.
So before we even start talking about jig fishing, because that's what you guys did your presentation on, what's the probability of a repeat 2019?
Slim. Pretty slim. We're probably going to spend a lot of time up in Wyoming this year, so we might catch a few of the Colorado Walleye Association tournaments, but I think we'll spend some time in Wyoming this year.
Oh, big news there, huh? Is that big news, or is that something that
I've
that
been
nobody
up there
knows?
for years.
Yeah.
I was runner-up for Wyoming Team of the Year in 2004, so I know that water pretty well up there. So.
Have you guys fished the Wyoming? Is it going to be the Stampede, or what is it? The Stampede? And
yeah.
what's the other one up there? Is it still in existence?
Wyoming Walleye Circuit.
The Walleye Circuit.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Yeah. So which
Yeah,
one are you guys going to fish? The Stampede?
Probably be the Stampede, yeah.
Okay. And this is the first year that you guys have fished that together as a team, or have
we
you done it
fished
in the
one
past?
event 2 years ago up there, but the first time we fished multiple events, yeah.
Gotcha. So you guys you'll try to do some CWA tournaments, and then you'll take your talents to Wyoming. Is that you guys LeBron James kind of deal? Something like that?
We're looking forward to breaking the ice here at Cherry Creek. So
There you go.
Brad and I are jig fishermen, but we finally learned how to troll, so we're going to try to go show off a little bit.
Me and Paul are going to follow you guys this year all the way around. See if we can figure it out.
Team Freddy's going to get it done?
We'll follow these guys around. I don't know if we'll get it done.
So that's awesome. In the Stampede, it's just a bigger pool of competition, right?
It is, yeah. And the lakes are bigger, a little bit more challenging that way. And so we thought that it'd be good that way to give that a chance. And then also catch a few of the CWA events. I think we're going to try to, fish Cherry Creek and maybe go back and fish Jumbo. We've had some good luck up there.
Awesome, and I want to talk about that here shortly, but it's something cool that Colorado anglers have. We have the ability to fish both circuits if we want to, the walleye anglers out there, so I think that's really cool. And Chet is going to be all over this. Anytime you mention the Stampede, Chet goes wild. So about jigs, so I'm when it comes to walleye fishing, my walleye fishing has been fall and spring jerk baits probably 95% of the time. When it comes to jig fishing, is it kind of the meat and potatoes of walleye fishing?
I would say it's the most versatile presentation you can have because you can catch fish year-round from ice off to ice on jig fishing. So it's the most versatile way you can catch fish throughout the year. And that's the reason I think that, it may have caught more walleyes than any other technique there is out there.
I think a lot of guys use that as a fallback technique. Well, nothing else working, let's go jig. So I think a lot of guys do it. A lot of them do it well, I'm not sure, but today hopefully they got an idea of some of the basics on where to start.
Right. And when you guys go out there, let's call it a tournament day, you're going out to practice for a tournament. Do you guys go to look for jig bites, or do you go and see what the bite's going to be?
I do.
You go look for
I
jigs,
seek it out.
Look for
Yes,
jig bites?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and is that something you guys put together throughout the practice days, and then put it together and say, okay, we're going to jig or we're going to do something else?
Well, depending on the time of the year, yeah, usually it's hard to get a jigging rod out of my hand. So from early spring clear, like you say, jigging wraps and spoons and stuff in the fall. So I spend a lot of my time with a jigging rod in my hand. Brad is more willing to experiment and do a little more recon. So I think we.
Yeah, but you're asking about our plan going into tournaments. If people, we need to get. We need to get a GoPro in the boat, and we're going to try to do it this year. Going off, getting ready for blast off, because between the time that we start lining up and the time we take off, usually we've come up with 3 or 4 different options of directions we're going to go and what we're going to do when we hit, the takeoff boat. And even at that, there's a chance we may pick a 4th spot that we never even discussed as we're driving down the lake.
It's like, let's just do that.
Let's just go there.
90-degree turn, stop, and you might be throwing crankbaits. Who knows?
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of people laughing. But when it does come to pre-fishing, we both feel real comfortable jig fishing, and we feel that anytime it's a jig bite, if we can find it, we're going to be competitive with any other team out there. Mm-hmm. So if we're able to find the jig bite, that's what our number one pattern's going to be. Now, where we do that, we may still be deciding as we're going 45 miles an hour down the lake.
Right, you'll figure that out. Now, when you guys go to try to find jig fish, we'll call them jig fish, right? Are you looking for size? You looking for numbers? Are you thinking putting bites together? Maybe we can do something else where we pick up size, fill our cards up, fill our limits up, and then go jig for those overs or those bigger fish. Is that kind of how you guys go about things?
That's a good question because it's hard to say. Sometimes you'll find those spots that have lots of numbers of fish in them, and there'll be one or two little tweaks in your presentation or maybe a different bait that will trigger larger fish to bite. So you can go through there and catch a limit in 5 minutes of small fish, but if you changed a couple things, maybe moved in or out, changed your technique, you'll catch those bigger fish.
Nice.
Well, and a lot of times we're pre-fishing out of 2 separate boats. And so at the end of the day, we may actually discuss what's going on, and I may go to a spot that Charlie found the day before, or he may go to a spot that I've found. And so what happens a lot of the times is maybe, well, I can tell you the spot we were fishing at Jumbo. I found it 2 days prior, fishing with my dad, mentioned it to him. He went back through and fished it. And a prime example, we went to our first spot, and within 30 minutes, we realized our first spot was dead. Mm-hmm. So we went and scrambled to this spot. Well, the way Charlie fished it was different than the way I fished it, but both of those presentations produced an overfish for us. So being able to get, that figured out, actually, we that day we were lucky. We probably had, I want to say 12 fish over 21 inches at least.
Unreal.
Yeah.
So Colorado, as you guys know, I'm not going to say we're fans of it, but Colorado's most definitely a trout state. But number 2 is walleye. So let's help those folks that are trout fishermen get into chasing walleye. And it sounds like jig fishing is really versatile and something that a lot of guys maybe should start with.
I think it's a great presentation for them to start with, and I also think that it's a presentation that goes throughout all species. So even if you mainly fish trout, I've caught a lot of trout in streams on jigs. I've caught them on lakes. So it's a presentation to learn that won't only produce you walleyes, but it'll produce you walleyes and panfish and largemouth and smallmouth and anything with an adipose fin attached to it.
Well, and it's cost effective too. That's the other thing that I really like about it. If you get people into jerkbait fishing and they're new to it and they're fishing riprap, they're going to donate a couple $100 quick. So when they're fishing jigs, and you guys talked a little bit about the color preferences and stuff like that. In some situations, they can fish just plain old lead jig heads without paint on them, and that's going to help them build confidence without costing them $200-300 while they're figuring it out. But if you're going to give them a baseline, okay, what jig heads and what jigs would you recommend them to start with?
I would pick my personal favorites, the VMC Moon Eye we talked about there for walleye fishing, but I've caught tons of fish on it. Big wipers, bass, all sorts of stuff. I would pick 1/8 and 1/4 ounce. Those would be the 2 sizes I would start with. And then I would pick with 2 different color. We mentioned we like multicolored jig heads. I would go with a set that's a little bit of the brighter, the chartreuses, the oranges, and then a set that's a little bit more of your naturals, your blacks, your whites, your hard reds, not your bright reds. And so I get, a few in the 1/8 in both the brights and the naturals, and then the quarters, I'd go brights and naturals. That's going to cover 85% of your fishing conditions.
Yeah. You got anything to add to that, Charlie?
Yeah, don't ever leave out elephant because regular old unpainted jig heads sometimes work just as good as anything else. So, and a lot of times throwing live bait, I'll throw regular old lead head. Now,
this time of year, spring, cold water, do you guys have curly tails on? Do you have flukes on? Do you have a minnows type style bait, a ribbon tail worm maybe, for example, or something like that?
That's one thing about jigging is it seems to work for me from the first time I get in my boat until I get out of my boat in the fall. So you start slow dragging live bait to swimming swim baits or twister tails. So you can pretty much jig year round.
Load them up.
Yeah, first start of the year, I'm usually using either twister tails or paddle tails. I want something that's given a little bit more vibration to it. The fish aren't chasing as much, but you need to let them know that the lure's coming, because a lot of times I'm fishing at night for these early walleyes. And using just a straight tail minnow doesn't give off much vibration. So I'm going to go with a twister tail is probably my first choice, and then swimming a paddle tail. The twister tail, I may swim it or jig it. The paddle tail pretty much is just a slow, steady retrieve. And last year, a week ago Friday, so that would have been March 8th, I was out at Chatfield catching them on the first time I tried the BioBait, the slime bug paddle tail there, and caught several walleyes at the old handicap pier, which is no longer. But
awesome.
So you can catch them early in the year doing that. But those are the two type tails I would go with first thing.
So what I want to recommend you guys to do, talking about the listeners here, you got a lot of great information on what jigs to start with from Brad and Charlie. Brad's got an article that's coming out in Mile High Fishing Magazine that kind of goes over some of the best walleye fisheries in the state. You could pair this podcast, that article together, and you've got a great baseline to go catch walleye, even if you don't have a big knowledge base to go off of. So, guys, I really recommend you do that. Brad and Charlie, you guys are going to be on the podcast for years to come. We appreciate you so much. Matt, you want to leave them with anything else?
No, I mean, just what would you – I mean, you guys already said it, so I mean, yeah. Go. Do you have any places that the folks can go follow you at? Whether it's Instagram, Facebook, social media accounts.
Yeah, Instagram for myself is Brad P Outdoors, and Facebook is Brad Petersen Outdoors. That's SEN, and then Charlie
is
Isn't it consistent angler, right?
Yes.
I just drew a blank.
Yeah, we're trying to get him worked into that Instagram stuff.
Yeah, he's new to all this Instagram, and you just surpassed 15,000 likes or something like that, right? Yeah. So go follow Brad, go follow Charlie, and like and share whatever they do because they got a lot of things that they're doing.
Yeah, and ask us questions. We're happy to answer questions. We're going to be posting, how fishing's going, and so we like to interact with the people that are following us. So don't be afraid to ask questions, send us messages, that type of stuff. Don't send it to us Friday night at 7 p.m. asking what the favorite bite is right before a tournament. It may take us till Monday to answer that question.
And guys, we'll all be at the St. Vrain Fishing Experience next weekend. What are you presenting on next weekend?
Walleye fishing up there. Hopefully the weather will be cooperating. I went by yesterday, and most of the ponds were still iced over. So I'm hoping that we get a little warm weather and wind, and the ponds are open so people can take the information and put it to use right there.
Fingers crossed for that. And guys, we're going to link all your guys' social media accounts, all that, in the podcast notes on this one. Appreciate you guys a ton, and make sure you follow Brad's Facebook page because you do speaking engagements all over the state. You give people a ton of great information. And Charlie, I'm sure you're going to start doing more of that as well. So follow him on social media. We appreciate you guys a ton.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.